Good evening, everyone, or good afternoon, or good morning to all of you, depending upon which part of the world you reside in. Thank you for joining us today for this webinar on Building an Ecological Civilization, Stories from the Heart. My name is Shakti Saran, and I'm the founder of a think tank called Shaktify. Shaktify's vision is to embrace a culture of oneness and to live in harmony with Mother Nature. And our mission is to empower change makers. Today's session is not so much a traditional webinar, but more of a roundtable between three Capra Course alumni. And for those of you who are not familiar with the Capra Course, it is the brainchild of Fritjof Capra, an eminent physicist, educator, systems thinker, and a wonderful human being whose unifying vision we have all imbibed. The objective of today's session is therefore to precipitate a discussion on an ecological civilization, and we're going to try and do this through storytelling. We're not going to present, a blueprint for what an ecological civilization might look like, but rather, demonstrate how incremental and small changes can help us walk on the path to attain or move in the direction of an ecological civilization. I'm delighted that we have with us today Joan Anderson and Nitisha Agrawal. Joan and Nitisha, welcome to today's session. I'm really honored by your presence. Will you please kindly introduce yourselves?
Thank you so much, Shakti. So happy to be here with you.
Thank you, Joan.
Joan, and I'm originally from Scotland, from Edinburgh, and I moved from Edinburgh to London, and then I moved eventually from London to Cambodia, where I lived for 4 years, and then I came to Japan, and I seem to have reached the far east and not have anywhere further to go. So I've been here for 27 years and was very fortunate to join the Capra Course a few years ago, which is where I encountered Shakti and a really wonderful community of people who I've never met, but who are amongst my closest friends. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Joan. Thank you for being with us today. Nitisha.
Hi, Shakti, and good evening and greetings from Mumbai, India. Firstly, thank you so much for setting up this conversation and inviting me. It feels like homecoming with Capra Course and Earth Charter and also Soka, Gakkai, which held me for quite some time in my life. So I feel honored to be here. I've had lots of years of experience doing different things, right from a corporate career with multinationals to where setting up my own foundation that works on very basic aspects of clean cooking and food, to now at a stage where I'm literally asking the same questions that we are, this evening trying to kind of bring to the table and have a good conversation. So thank you so much and looking forward to it.
Thank you, Nitisha. It's wonderful to have you with us today. Yeah, thank you so much. Before we get started, I just wanted to make one or two quick announcements. So if any of you, who has a question to pose to our panelists today, and I should, welcome our audience today. So thank you all, all our participants who are here in this webinar today. I'm pleased to share that we have had over 100 registrations for this session, and we have, at least the registrations came in from over 24 countries besides India. And these range from Austria to Uruguay, from Canada to Japan. So before we get started, I just wanted to request all of you who are with us today to, if you have a question for any one of us, that if you could please put that in the Q&A box and not in the chat, because the three of us are not going to have enough time to monitor the chat. The chat is going to be unmonitored. Also, during the registration process, we gave all registrants an option to ask a question in advance, and we have received a lot of questions, a lot of suggestions for some topics to be included. So we are going to try our best to, get the best possible response. Yes, so the three of us will be in conversation for about approximately 35 minutes. Thereafter, we will open the session to audience Q&A, and then we'd have a 5-minute, a close and a wrap up. Yes, so thank you all once again, and I'm going to get started by, posing a question to Joan. And Joan, you've been based in Tokyo now for almost 27 or 28 years. And you've been with Soka Gakkai International. But even before that, you spent a lot of time in Asia. You were in Cambodia and also in northern Iraq. Right? So what made you join Soka Gakkai International, SGI?
That's a good question. I encountered Soka Gakkai first when I was living in London, and I was at a time in my life where I was actually working in the financial sector, and I had this feeling that my values and my personal inner life and my outer life didn't match, and that was manifesting itself in some fairly unhealthy behavior on my part, I think you could say. And very fortunately, I encountered some people who were part of the Soka Gakkai, and I immediately recognized that this was a philosophy and a practice that was both sort of grounding and inspiring. It had those two elements of sort of being very real and practical, and also opening up a whole new sort of ideal of a better world that I could actually feel was possible. So that then led me to move into quite rapidly, actually, to move my career into something that fitted better with my values, which was overseas development work, initially as an editor. And then from there, I was able to move to Cambodia. And it was while I was in Cambodia that again, because I was practicing the teachings of SGI Buddhism, which is based on the Lotus Sutra, and yet what I was seeing in the development world around me was what I would ultimately call disempowering. So I was practicing this empowering teaching, and I was seeing a small group of Cambodians who were involved with that becoming very confident and hopeful about their own lives. But what I was seeing in my work life was endless failures of projects to sort of take root, because people didn't have that inner sense of belief and hope in themselves. So in the end, I came to the conclusion, I went to Japan and was able to meet Daisaku Ikeda, who was the president of the Soka Gakkai, and
yes,
meeting him was like, okay, I now have seen the whole picture, and I feel I really like and trust what this movement is trying to do. And so then I was very fortunate to be able to shift to actually work for SGI, and that has just been a fascinating experience, because it brings together, for me personally, the writing and editing work that I had done, and also work related to peace, environmental issues, human rights, mostly from a sort of educational perspective or an advocacy perspective. That's mostly what we do. But overall, what I love about SGI is that it's about using the teachings and practice of Buddhism to empower individuals to bring out the best in their own lives, what we call the Buddha nature, courage, wisdom, compassion, and a sense of, ultimately, of hope. So it's a great community to be part of, and there's lots of young people and constantly new things coming up. So I'm definitely in a very fortunate place myself. So thank you for letting me share.
Wonderful. So what I loved about what you said was right in the beginning, it was very striking about your inner world and the outer world being out of alignment and trying to bring that into alignment. I think that applies for so many of us. And if we can really achieve that, if we can bring both into alignment, like how powerful can it get? How wonderful. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for that enlightening answer, Joan. Nitisha, I'm going to move to you. we've known each other for, over 4 years now. By the way, we were in the same batch as the Capra course. Nitisha and I attended that together, and that's where I met her. So Nitisha, you come from the corporate sector. You've had, a distinguished corporate career. The last job you were at in the corporate sector was with Volkswagen. And then you chose to give it all up. You chose to give up your corporate sector career to focus on sustainability and impact. What were you going through at that point of time that, made you take that decision? And can you also briefly tell us a little bit more about your work at Smokeless Cookstove Foundation?
Sure. So there's a lot of Joan's journey that resonates with me as well about inner curiosity, inner questions, not being able to align, what you are talking throughout the day. And when you come back to your home and to your heart, you realize that there is dissonance. So I think, for me, that was the trigger. But to kind of, go back a little bit about my journey, um, my initiation into where I am right now probably began even much earlier through a personal loss and a great grieving time, which is where I encountered Soka Gakkai and sort of clung on to that philosophy of empowerment, because I was looking for something to give me answers, and I wasn't able to find those answers in my job or in my role as a mother or several other tags that we have externally, because I think the questions were so overwhelming and it was deeply personal at that point in time. But it was the spiritual aspect of the philosophy that sort of gave me an opening and got me thinking that it's not, we're not here to get a definitive answer. We are here to use those questions to sort of propel ourselves on the journey forward. It's not easy. I think it's an everyday task to tell yourself that, you have questions, stay with questions, and keep moving forward. You may or may not encounter the answer. But my time at Soka Gakkai also opened up curiosity about sustainability and ecology for me, because I think that's the power of the practice, that it kind of not only talks about inner empowerment, but it looks at a civilization, it looks at humanity at large, it looks at the collective. And I think once you sort of gain a little bit of that inner strength, your heart opens up to things around you. And I think that's the trigger, that was the trigger for me, where when I gained a little bit of empowerment and strength to kind of stand up and, go through my days and get some sort of path to overcome my grief of personal loss. That's when I started getting interested in questions about Earth, interested in, understanding what's happening with the Earth, what the aspects of planetary boundaries and, our impact, human impact on the Earth and its residents. And I think the most beautiful part about this journey is that it has always opened up a door for me. So from Soka Gakkai, it led me to the Earth Charter. From the Earth Charter, it led me to, Bridgeoff and the work of so many other thinkers who are actually deep diving into ecological civilization. So it's those strings. And somewhere in that path, I realized that, I need to let go of my corporate career, because I've had a great stint. It was 17 years of working in very, very big organizations and very positive. I actually felt that I was able to deliver really good work and make great friends. And, it helped me very nicely. I'm still great friends with a lot of my, peers from the corporate time, but it was chapter closed. And then moving on to something that I didn't know what it's going to be, and but it kind of, the seeds were sown through my practice of the Buddhist philosophy by Soka Gakkai, and then learning through the Earth Charter, leading me to the Capra Course, and what I do with Smokeless Foundation, which is a grassroots NGO. I sort of co-designed intervention for improved cooking. It's a clay-based stove where we use rocket stove technology as a clean combustion principle. And it's a training program that we deliver to communities that are still heavily dependent on traditional ways of cooking, thereby impacting many aspects of their lives. The idea of a small design change creating a shift in their cooking environment was something that fascinated me. And it was a blending of a science and a problem that our communities face, and finding a sort of pathway to connect those two in a model where I am the one who do all the learning, because it's my time with the communities that teaches me more than what I can offer to them. And that's how Smokeless Cookstove Foundation came about. Um, it is not just about helping them shift from traditional cooking to improved cooking, but it has thrown open so much for me to understand that we cannot look at all these things linearly, and we will need to consider the network, the systems thinking. We'll have to wear all those hats if at all we have to move towards you know the ecological civilization. So that's where I'm at right now, in the thinking mode.
Right. Terrific. Yeah. Thank you.
Shakti, I
Thank
think
you,
we were going to also ask you to share a bit about
Yeah.
your story.
Oh, all right. Okay. All right. So okay. Thank you, Joan, for that poser. So I'm a veteran corporate sector. Uh, what do I say? I hail from the corporate sector. I spent over 3 decades there. My plan was to retire at the age of 45, but that never happened. And then I thought I reset my target date to the age of 53, and that also never happened. So finally, IBM, which was my last corporate sector job, said, look, now you have to get the hell out of here because you've touched 58 and we don't need you anymore. And that was really just a fabulous blessing, I just felt that stepping outside the boundaries imposed by the corporate sector, it uh, it just opened. It just felt like the doors of the universe had opened. But there's another aspect to this, and that is that, even at a fairly young age, I was aware of certain things. And for me, there was one thought that lasted through my corporate career, and that was to transform a system. It's best done and most effective by working from the inside. So I feel that the time that I spent at the corporate sector has not been wasted. It has given me enough insights, in fact, tremendous insights as to the nuances of what really works in the corporate sector, because we are going to speak a lot about the ecological dimension of life today and the extent to which the world of economics and business has disrupted that. So I feel in one sense that this has been a big endowment to me. It may sound very paradoxical, but that's been my journey. And of course, after exiting the corporate sector, it's just been a series of learning experiences, and just to be in community with people from the Capra Course, as well as some of the other communities that I'm a part of, is, I think, a huge gift. And I feel very blessed to have received that. Yes. So yes, so that's my answer, Joan. So maybe Joan, Nitisha, and Joan, Nitisha, maybe we could just start amongst ourselves. Let's just also be clear, when we speak about an ecological civilization, what does it actually mean? It might mean different things to different people. So I thought, maybe shouldn't we just have a quick round amongst ourselves, and Nitisha, maybe you could just start by telling us, what does an ecological civilization mean to you?
Uh, I think we've been pondering on that for quite some time since you came up this particular subject. And it's a very beautiful term for me, because I feel very fortunate that through my work that I do through foundation, I actually get to work with a lot of communities who are indigenous and tribal in nature, who are living in harmony with the nature. And some of the things that I understand from them actually makes me think that those are the ecological societies, those are the ecological communities where they literally practice harmony with nature and all its living beings. They practice nonviolence. They practice, honoring each other, and they only consume as much as needed, and do not believe in overconsumption. They live their lives actually to the fullest. So there's joy amongst themselves. Um, they also hold on to something that is precious to them, which is, for example, the tribal communities that are in the vicinity of the forests. It's very clear amongst them that, they will only forage the firewood that is fallen, or, it's a dead tree that is going to, anyways, it's at the end of its life cycle. They will not cut a young, mature tree. When they consume meat, they sort of, only consume only consume meat as much as that is required by their family. And they will nurture the lives of animals, and they will take permission before they can actually do the killing. So I think that is what ecological society is. They will worship the water. They will take permission before sowing the seeds on the farm. They will look for the right time. They will eat what the nature is offering as a cycle in terms of fruits and vegetables. Like, for instance, just very recently, when we had the festival of Holi in India, there's a certain tribal communities, and it's a mango season for us here in India. But that community of tribes will only and only start eating mango after Holi, and after the first lot of those mangoes have fallen on the ground, because their belief is, that it'll first need to be consumed by other beings who are around once they are fallen on the ground, and that's when it's okay for them to harvest it. So I think that kind of wisdom, that kind of intelligence that some of our indigenous communities have, to me, that's what perhaps what the ecological civilization looks like. Not really, a very well planned and structured and lot of technologies, and going through our days in a structured manner, kind of a thing, and trying to control the outcomes all the time, and predicting everything or forecasting everything linearly. Um, but I think, intuitively living your life, keeping in mind that you're a part of a system, and you have correlation with everything in your environment, right? From the soil to the house, to the animals, to the forests, to the weather patterns, to your whole, neighbors. Um, we all know about how these communities kind of work on each other's farms as barter. So that's an example of how literally an ecological civilization works. It's not about, what you're profiteering from the other person, but it's about standing up for the community when there is help that is required. And I feel so fortunate because I still see this in practice in the communities that I work with. So it gives me a lot of hope. It gives me a lot of optimism. So for me, the view is grounds up, which kind of helps me understand where we are right now and what's possible through these communities.
All right, great. Thank you, Nitisha. I think you have what you just shared with us is that you've lived the life of an ecological civilization, not just spoken about it or contemplated about it, but through your experience, you've actually, seen or tasted what an ecological civilization is like. Thank you. Joan, what is your take on an ecological civilization?
Yeah, this is for me, it's more abstract, I guess, because I'm not living in and working in directly in that kind of environment, which sounds honestly so beautiful. And sadly, when I was living in Cambodia, which was, I was much closer to that traditional way of living, there was already huge extraction going on of the forest, for instance, in one of the areas we were actually working in, and it was extremely dangerous for people to sort of stand up to that or question it in any way. It had already gathered this huge momentum, which was really very, very sad to witness. So I'm in a different place where I'm trying from one of the most urban environments in the world, here in Tokyo, I guess, trying to imagine, yes, if from my life here, what does it mean? And I guess one of the main things is community, as you said, because actually in Tokyo is a series of villages, in a very surprising way, and there are very strong local community groups, and they have their traditional ceremonies involving the Shinto shrines, which, even if they're not very explicitly kind of understanding the values behind those necessarily, there is that very strong sense of cohesive community. And I think that has to be a starting point for trying to bring in different values. Japan is a country that values nature in little bits and pieces here and there, and then bulldozes it and creates hideous structures the rest of the time. So there's a lot of contradiction, and it's quite hard to hold on to that sense of living with nature. But there are people who have allotments, and I farm a little bit on my balcony, and there are co-ops which bring fresh and organic vegetables in. People try to order their fruit and vegetables from those as they can. And I think for me, the other thing I would say that it's about is about gratitude and just trying to feel that sense of appreciation for the living beings and systems that are supporting our lives. And funnily enough, in my apartment, the word arigato in Japanese, you've probably heard,
Yes.
means thank you. The previous occupant in my apartment had stuck little stickers saying arigato where the water comes in and where the electricity comes in. I don't know why. It's a very sort of unusual thing, but that sort of makes me think about the resources that I'm using. And I guess to me, the image that came to me when I was to sum up about ecological civilization was when I went to Bodh Gaya in India to visit the tree where, Gautama or Shakyamuni Buddha is said to have sat to attain enlightenment. That tree was not just a tree. It was buzzing with life. It was full of little animals. It was full of little birds. And it was so different from what I had imagined. And I was so happy about that, because that in itself really was a precious lesson and an image for me to take away. So thank you. Over to you, Shakti.
All right. So, okay, but just before that, Joan, I will give you my take of an ecological civilization. But are we saying in any way that an industrial society and an ecological civilization cannot coexist? Do you have a view on that? Are these two mutually exclusive civilizations? Are we looking at, going back to the pre-industrial revolution era? Are the three of us committing to never catch a flight in the future? So I just want us to be really very clear as to what are the contours of this ecological civilization. And I'll give you my take also, but would love to hear you just touch upon it.
Well, I guess just briefly, I would say that yes, I think it's absolutely not possible to, turn back any clocks. We have to start from where we are. And that's where I think trying to find the ways to, in little ways to start, maybe it's local. It always has to start locally, I think, local ownership of resources, local decision making about maybe energy projects or recycling or whatever it is, those very small things that just get people thinking in a different way, still living amidst the concrete and still, buying most of their stuff from big chain stores, but just seeing that there are cracks and there are things that can grow in the cracks and really looking for those. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so just building up on what you shared just now, Joan, for me, an ecological civilization is really industrial society living in symbiosis with nature. It is not going against the grain of the industrial revolutions that we've seen. Today, we're on a Zoom call, which is being enabled by, a latter-day industrial revolution. So for me, it's the key issue is really of attaining balance, and that we are today at at a planetary level, we are completely out of sync with nature. And for me, an ecological civilization would mean looking at that goal as the most cherished goal, to restore that balance, but not doing away with what we've achieved in the last 400 years, in terms of 300 years in terms of science and technology. And that really is my focus now at Shaktify. How do we bring that balance? How do we restore that balance? How do we live in harmony with nature? Yes, this is certainly not, for me, an attempt to adopt exotic ways, to wear the hat of Don Quixote and then start fighting the windmills. It's a non-starter. Yeah, I tried doing that when I was very young and I realized my stupidity. So that's the reason why I chose my corporate career. Yeah, so that for me is an ecological civilization. And but Joan, a question to you is, and you spoke about this, you just touched upon it about, some small changes that each one of us can bring into our daily lives, into our work lives, into our personal lives. And I know Soka Gakkai International is also has, adopted that approach. Can you dwell on that a little more? Yeah, just to make my point very clear, I as Shakti, I just run a small little tiny think tank. Yeah, I don't have the power within me, not remotely, to convince the US administration to rejoin the Paris Treaty. Yeah, that's completely out of my scope. Yeah, but then I ask myself, what is it that I can do? And so my question to you is, based on your experience at Soka Gakkai International, what is the emphasis on, why is it that we're looking at, why is it that you are looking at the power of small changes? And can you just share about your experiences, at SGI and, this approach that you've adopted at SGI?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Actually, that's a really important question and aspect of what we do that I haven't really touched on. So we use this phrase human revolution to talk about inner change. And there is a sort of key phrase that we have, which is that a great human revolution in even a single individual can spark a change in a nation and even in the world, to sort of shorten it, and which sounds kind of unbelievable, really, that this kind of inner change can have that impact. But I'm surrounded by people who are in their own way. This is what I would absolutely stress. Not everyone is going to be becoming a farmer on their balcony or addressing environmental challenges, but there are individuals. I can think of a few off the top of my head, young people one in Germany, who started just something very, very small on his own university campus because he was frustrated. He was actually really angry that his university wasn't doing anything about becoming carbon neutral. And he ended up sparking a move that led to a complete change in the way his university governs itself and much more student involvement in decision making, and really, really revived a lot of interest in environmental issues and the whole system, the whole way the university was run. So that there are lots of examples like that, and that would be our kind of model, that nobody is telling people what to do, but through their own inner reflection and practice, and through hopefully some wisdom that we're all gaining, they can see, okay, this is where I'm passionate. This is where I see a little niche. And I have a good friend here, wonderful woman who's doing great work here in Japan for environmental issues. And she's also involved in the movement to save tigers in India. She's raising money for that. So, you know, everyone has their own little niche and just gradually pushes away at it. And over time, there's what I call a cycle of empowerment, that person begins to see more and more that they can actually do more. And yes, they'll hit obstacles. I think this is a very important aspect of us. For us, you will hit obstacles. You will want to give up. But that's when you draw on your practice and you draw on the teachings and encouragement of, for example, Mr. Ikeda or Nichiren, whose teachings we follow, and that enables you to keep going. And in the end, then hopefully you've given and contributed and come up with something really unique. And just to say one final thing, I think it's so important to look at human beings in a positive way in this, and that we have so much creativity and so much to contribute, and we should really watch ourselves and not start looking at human beings only as parasites on this planet. Anyway, thank you. And I'd love to hear, Nitisha, I'd love to hear more from you.
Yeah, but before that, I actually want to also kind of, give my 2 bits about Shakti's earlier question about industrial revolution and ecological civilization. I definitely feel that, it is a movement. Industrial revolution was needed at that point of time, so we went through it. And now we are progressing towards something that is the call of today's time. So this is not something that can kind of, help us out independent of each other. There has to be a middle path. And I think what is beautiful right now is the consciousness towards recognizing that we have crossed certain boundaries as a collective. And conversations like these, and institutional frameworks like Soka Gakkai or the Earth Charter or the Capra Course, these are the frameworks that is actually helping us maybe think and ask questions, where the idea is not to dismiss what is happening or what has happened, but the idea is to find a way forward. Because I think, all philosophies talk about hope and optimism. There is not a single spiritual practice or a philosophical, practice that doesn't ask that kind of, focuses on despair. So it is the hope, right? And where is that hope coming from? That hope is coming from our collective experience. If we would have not gone through what the Industrial Revolution or even previously has led us to, we probably would have not been in this thinking mode. So also, I think there is a really big movement that is happening in the space of technology for good. And even our communities that are still, trying to live within the harmony of nature, there is a lot of technological aspects that they also require, especially in the space of healthcare or helping them improve what they already have. And they can't do that without, technologies and a lot of innovations that in the world is working towards. And the good part is that, through small works or larger frameworks, a lot of these communities are able to access those technologies now, which was not happening earlier. So there's movement. But that movement has to grow, and that movement, will need to get sparked off. And I certainly feel that the youth, the younger generation, and we've received a lot of questions about, how do we influence youth? I don't think we can influence youth. I think they are themselves extremely conscious, and they are raising the kind of questions that probably my generation was very busy living the corporate life, but they are looking out of their windows, and they are looking at, what's not right with our system right now, and asking those relevant questions. So I think that's that's the pathway to ecological civilization, using our experiences from the past few revolutions that we have gone through. So
Thank you, Nitisha. I'm just mindful of time, and we have some more ground to cover. But you brought up this thing about the Earth Charter, and what I just find very interesting in in having got both of you on board for this session is that you had some you had some common threads in your journey in terms of Soka Gakkai, but also in terms of the Earth Charter. So can you just briefly share with us your association, both of you, Nitisha, you and Joan, your association with the Earth Charter, and what has that really meant to you?
okay, so maybe I'll go first. So like I shared, Soka Gakkai led me to the Earth Charter.
All right.
And that's where I kind of started looking at what is this Earth Charter, which goes beyond sustainable development goals. And to me, the very fact that the Earth Charter humanizes everything, the framework is from a human lens, and not a lens of number. That was, I think, that is what kind of, helped me latch on to that framework. And for me, what appeals is compassion. The softness of the entire thing, rather than rage or harshness or despair. Those are not the kind of feelings that at least I kind of use. For me it's the compassion, for me it's the kindness, for me it's the peace, for me it's justice, for me it's integrity, truth. And all these are the pillars of the Earth Charter. I mean, the pillars are so strong and they are so fundamental that, only if we can kind of base our individual thinkings on those pillars of the Earth Charter, I think it is going to help us break through a lot of the obstacles that, even Joan spoke about. So those are the things that attracted me towards the Earth Charter. And then I had the good fortune of doing a couple of programs, learning programs with them. One being education and sustainable development, where I chose the theme of nature being a third parent for really young kids. And, it helped me set up a small weekend club called the Children of Tribe, where this was pre-COVID, where I had very young city kids holding on to me as we would cross the rivers, or we would make some little some things out of the sticks. We would make mud faces, and that was my project with education and sustainable development, to create a sort of opening for the children who actually don't know what a muddy path is all about. And that was such a wonderful experience for me. And I just use these frameworks of patience, peace, honesty, integrity. And you see that in children very naturally. And, so I feel that these are the values that is embedded into a young child. It's just that they kind of get shaken as we grow up. And then the other powerful framework that ECI has is this program on ethics, which is leadership, sustainability, and ethics, and which again is very relevant to the work that I do, because I shifted from corporate to development. And like Joan shared, a lot of times you really question the ethics even in the social sector. Um, and this whole sustainability, big talk. And I think that program that Earth Charter has is so relevant, because again, it pushes you to think inward before you before you put out your ESG reports or your SDG, targets, etc., it pushes you to think that, are you as an individual or a business leader or a business owner, are you following the path of consciousness? Is your business a conscious business? Are you treating your employees, with peace and are you honest? Do you follow a path of truth? So it's a staggering program, and I love the fact that Earth Charter has so much emphasis on youth, especially when it comes to peace and justice. And I think these are the seeds that we need more and more forests coming out of these seeds. So
Excellent.
yeah, that's
Thank you, Nitisha. Joan, you have also had a long association with the Earth Charter, if I'm not mistaken, from its very inception. Yeah, can you briefly tell us about your association?
Yes, sure. Yes, I was very fortunate to be involved even before the final text was solidified. And I do encourage people, if they haven't read the Earth Charter, please do. I'll just read the opening sentence. It says, "We stand at a critical moment in Earth's history, a time when humanity must choose its future. As the world becomes increasingly interdependent and fragile, the future at once holds great peril and great promise." And it's really poetic, and some people even say it's like a prayer. I mean, it's a beautifully holistic document. And I think what's very strong about it is that it does not have an affiliation with any one particular spiritual or religious philosophy. They very carefully drew on many different strands and input from many people, including indigenous peoples. And this really gives it it can fit to more or less anyone, and people can own it without feeling that they're signing up to something. I mean, of course, there are people who oppose it because they think it's too internationalist or too much about interdependence. But I think a lot of people can find something. And there's a particular phrase in it I love, which is, again, when basic needs have been met, we must realize that when basic needs have been met, human development is primarily about being more, not having more. And just that sentence in itself, I think, can spark a lot of discussion. I went to the launch of the Earth Charter, where I met some incredible people. I'm going to the 25th anniversary celebrations in a few months. And I've always found it's a great tool for discussion, for dialogue, and for learning. And we've made a series of learning resources together with the Earth Charter over the years, exhibitions, which have been quite useful. But I know there'd been a question put in the chat about all very well having great values, but what about having an overarching initiative such as the IDGs, the Inner Development Goals? But I do think the Earth Charter is one beautiful overarching initiative. Of course, we will always each find what fits us best. But to me, the Earth Charter has always been very inspirational and a great network for, as Nitisha said, bringing together young people really from around the world. And they function in English and Spanish primarily. So they really bring in Latin America, that so often gets left out of a lot of global conversations. Thanks.
Being more and not having more, that is like really, really powerful. Yeah, Joan. But Joan, weren't you also involved in the inception of the Earth Charter and the run-up to the creation of the Earth Charter? Wasn't there some association that you had?
So there was during the drafting process, many different people there were consultations. So for one thing, our president, Mr. Ikeda, gave some input into the drafting process on a couple of occasions. And also we held consultations at SGI centers, particularly in the US, and we have an affiliated kind of think tank in Boston that was called the Boston Research Center for the 21st Century. And they did a consultation with women, a consultation with different Buddhist leaders, and a comparison of human rights law and the Earth Charter. So they had a lot of input. And I think actually that phrase about being more, not having more, came from one of those consultations, from what I understand. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Okay, excellent. I'm just doing a time check, and I think we've kind of sort of, we don't have a lot of time. So should we just move on to the Q&A, or is there anything you feel that we haven't covered? Yeah, should we just move to the Q&A then? There's a lot of questions that we received in advance. Yeah, there's far many more questions that we received at the time of registration. So maybe what we could do is each one of us could pick a question and read it out, and then it could be a question either from the list that has been circulated before with our panelists on the questions that came in earlier, or the questions that may be in the Q&A box right now. And yeah, who would like to go first? Nitisha, you or Joan, would you like to take a pick? And
I can go first. And
all right.
I think we received questions around how do we engage youth and how do we bring in young people into this entire discussion? And there were a few questions around that. So my perspective to that, I don't have an answer, but it's a perspective that, again, a lot of these frameworks, we have to look for these frameworks. All the frameworks, powerful frameworks, have a lot of work that they do with the youth, with young children, and then also with the youth. And I think the reason for that is we all collectively understand that, we are, whatever we will do, we may not have the right results in short term, but we are now looking at a much longer term horizon. I think, even in Soka Gakkai, the view is 100 years from now or 200 years from now. And who is that? Who are the people who are going to lead us over there? Not us, but it's going to be the youth. So I feel that, there's this whole thing about children being misguided and they are hyper exposed to things that are not good in our society. But I also feel that, there is that much more consciousness that youth have today. And our education system has to play the pivotal role. And as parents, we need to take those certain conscious decisions to ensure that the children are able to see the world in its view, but also have the maturity to kind of, pick things that are going to be relevant and worth fighting for, rather than being misguided. Unfortunately, what I see in the rural communities, it's a much difficult roadmap for the youth in the rural communities, because not only are they hyper exposed, but they are gravely aspirational towards the urban way of living. And that is leading to a lot of displacement in their mental perspective. So I do feel that a lot more work has to happen with our youth that are residing in rural communities, because there the displacement and ambiguity is much more. They want to run towards the city, and then when they come to the city, they are really, really confused. Whereas the urban kids, with all their privileges and with the right kind of nudges that our frameworks can provide, our education system can provide, should be in a position to kind of, really build the future in a much more beautiful manner. So it's everybody's responsibility. It's not just the schools. It's the entire society's responsibility to actually hold them again. Just you look at your charter principles of peace, justice, integrity, honesty. These are the values. These are the values that have to be kind of we have to make sure that our children are exposed to these. They may not understand everything right now, but I think just bringing it forward to them is the initial work that we have to do.
Thank you. Thank you, Nitisha. Joan, would you like to go next? And I would just request both you, Joan and Nitisha, when you're answering a question, if you could please also read out the name of the person who's asked the question. Yeah, and so that gets just acknowledged. Yeah, so Joan, if you could take.
Right. I'm afraid when I was printing out the questions, which I know I shouldn't have done, I couldn't get the names on the same piece of paper, so the names have got separated. I'm
Okay,
sorry
no
about
worries.
that.
You can tell
One,
me, you can read the question and I will try and dig out.
okay. There were two questions I was going to try to give very brief answers to. One was someone who is studying an MASc in creative health, talking about gathering scientific evidence for enhancing our well-being through contact with nature, and asking, are there similar examples in Asia? And I was just going to give a brief answer to say yes, definitely. In Japan at the moment, the concept of so-called forest bathing is very popular, and it's getting, and there is a big movement to get people are getting out into nature more, partly as a result of COVID, actually, when they couldn't meet in enclosed spaces so much. And also there's a sort of focus on what people call power spots, in that they identify particular trees or particular locations as having this kind of energy that a lot of young people are attracted to that concept. I picked a simple one there. The next question was, I think it literally was the same one, next one on the list. It said, can you describe China's role in eco-civilization rollout? And actually that's something I know a little bit about, because there were some presentations on that theme at an Earth Charter conference last year that I went to. And it's quite striking that the Chinese government actually has incorporated ecological civilization into their national policy. It's now actually in the constitution. Now, we can all have various degrees of trust or belief in that, but I think it's still very striking that it's now integrated apparently into their 5-year plans and national strategy for green development, and there's various projects that have been developed out of that. And but to read the phrase in the Constitution, it's a little complex, because it says they adhere to core socialist values and promote development of material, political, spiritual, social, and ecological civilization, which is quite a mouthful. So, but yeah, there definitely has been quite a strong move, at least within the upper levels of the Chinese government, to promote this concept. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. So the people who asked that question, the first question that you answered was Elsie from the UK. And the second question, which was on China's role in eco-civilization, was from Indra Adnan from the UK. Yes, so I'm going to pick a question now, and that is, so it is another question that Indra Adnan from the UK asked was how to model eco-civilization at the community level. And then there was and Deepak Basavaraj from India asked, how can we, people already working with Mother Nature, inspire especially city dwellers to be more sensitive and considerate towards Mother Nature? And there is Maria from Japan who said, would love to hear specific examples of the building of ecological intelligence and the marrying of inner development goals with future sustainable development goals. Yeah, so as I shared with you earlier that I, sort of hail from the corporate sector. I spent, a very significant amount of time there. And ecological intelligence to me means that understanding through the use of datafication, the understanding the contribution of all the products and services that we use as part of the industrial economy, and that their impact on our environment, on the planet, on climate change. And I don't know how many of you are aware, but over the last 2 decades or so, there has been a new interdisciplinary subject. It's a discipline called industrial ecology. And it has extensively been discussed in this book by Daniel Goleman. It's a book called Ecological Intelligence. If any of you haven't read it, I'd urge you to read it. So you would know that Daniel Goleman is the person who founded the movement for emotional intelligence. So there is another book that he's written called Ecological Intelligence. And he has, through some significant amount of research, advocated the use of datafication to understand, or to come up with an attribution of all the consequences of the services and products that are used by the industrial economy. So that has given birth to, something which is called a life cycle assessment. LCA is something which is which many organizations are now adopting. If you go to YouTube, you will find a lot of literature, a lot of videos on an LCA. And what we are really trying to do through industrial ecology and through life cycle assessment is to be able to deconstruct the entire value chain. So if you were to look at a mid-sized car today, it actually has hundreds and thousands of processes, and to be able to pick up the consequences of each one of these processes, with respect to the environmental consequences. And these processes could be from the time you start mining the material till the time the resources are used in manufacturing, the distribution of the products or services, and the actual consumption, and then, the end of life. So life cycle really covers everything. It's from cradle to grave. So there has been increasing consciousness, and the reason why I think this is so important is because if we as consumers had a choice, then we would be more mindful of the products and services that we consume. Let me give this to you with an example. I spent, the winter in Switzerland with my daughter recently, and for those of you familiar with Switzerland, there's this nice supermarket chain called Migros, and I would go to Migros very often because it was just a good time pass, to go to a grocery store. I was really very surprised because Migros, 80% of the products that Migros sells on their shelves are their own branded products. It's only 20% that are non-Migros branded products. And for most of their products, they have, for all the food and edible products, they have a health label, a rating, and also for all the other products, they have a label which is called unchecked, M-check. And this does the rating is based on a whole lot of factors, but this rating makes you aware of the contribution of this particular product to the regeneration of the earth. So I think it's really something which is very novel. It's being done in pockets today, and the need of the day today is for this movement, for customers, for consumers to be seeking this information, from the corporations that produce these goods and services. And only in doing so, what Daniel Goleman really speaks about is that there is this whole asymmetry of information. And as consumers, we can be activists to seek this information. And only when we start seeking this information will change take place. And in fact, he is not advocating anything which is contrary to market forces, but he is, advocating, an approach which is very consistent with the way our markets function today. So if, for those of you who are familiar with homeopathy, it's homeopathy is, by the way, is not an Eastern science. It originated in Europe, in Germany. And homeopathy means treating a disease with poison, right? In very microscopic quantities. So if datafication is responsible for this unchecked economic growth that we are witnessing today, then maybe we could just use datafication to actually get to the roots of this problem and, reverse the problem. So it's like applying poison to the malaise. Yeah, so I just found that extremely, extremely novel. And, so I think there's considerable hope, because none of us are going to be switching off our light bulbs after this webinar today. None of us are going to not use rapid transport. None of us are not going to a supermarket tomorrow and buy stuff. So we are industrial consumers, whether we like it or not. Yeah, we are going to take a flight sometime, in our lives that are ahead of us. So we just need to be conscious of that. How can we work within the system itself to bring about this ecological intelligence? And for me, this is like a real stepping stone to moving in the direction of an ecological civilization. Yeah. All right. So that was my question. Now, I think we have one more very quick round, like in a minute each. If each one of us can go through one more question, and then we can call it a close after that. Nitisha, Joan?
I think, or I could just maybe very briefly comment on the IDGs, the Inner Development Goals.
Yes.
The question had been raised about them. I'm not sure many people may not be familiar with them, but it's a very innovative approach to a very different attack to the Sustainable Development Goals, which are setting kind of external targets. This is more about the inner qualities we need as human beings in terms of building relationships, communication skills, cognitive skills, caring for others, social skills, etc. There's a very interesting set of goals. They are, to be honest, I have a little bit of a concern that it's very much a commercial operation in itself. There is quite a bit of investment required if one wants to get involved in an official way. But I think the idea and the goals themselves are really exciting and really link the inner and the outer worlds, which is what we've been talking about. So I'll stop there for now. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Joan. Nitisha? If you have the name of the person who's asked the question, then please do share that.
Not specifically, but I think, I can talk about the community aspect of it.
Okay.
And I think I already shared why I feel that a lot of the communities already have the ecological framework. But in order to, the question is specifically, how can one go about building ecological communities or ecological civilizations? I think there's no set framework for something like that. But however, to have a deep understanding, starting from the lens of unlearning what we already have, what systems, what operating systems that we've been operating with, it will mean that a lot of the information and the knowledge systems that we have probably will need to be erased. And then we take on the lens of seeker, and we take on the lens of, in Daniel Christian Wald's book, he speaks about a lens of apprentice, or a lens of a seeker, or a lens of a pilgrim. I think we'll have to go with those approaches if we are to even think about building or nudging the communities into an ecological community. And how each one of us can play a role is to not assume that, we have the power to change something or bring about a change, because I don't think we can function individually. So this has to happen in a community. It has to happen in a society. And I think, every new thought or discussion or climate discourse is pointing towards that, it has to be movements from different directions rather than top down or only bottoms up. It has to have all flows from all angles. And then create something which is like a melting pot that may look like an ecological civilization. But it has to be based on non-ego. And we have to break down the silos and assumptions that only this technology can bring about this change, or only this framework or this type of agricultural practice is going to change. I think we have to get out of that sort of operating system and really just go in with like a child's view of everything. And I think from there a lot of things emerge, and that's the work that I would like to do in this space, is to really go as a child seeking answers and hoping to build something together.
Thank you, Nitisha. Yeah, I'm going to take one final question and then we call it a close. So this is a question that was raised by Lauren Elizabeth Clare from Oregon in the US. And she asked, how would you suggest that the vision of ecological civilization be integrated into education, both theory and practice? So we've had one of our national poets was Rabindranath Tagore, and he set up this school which was out in the lap of nature. And I don't think that idea has really caught on. It was a school. It was a great experiment that he tried. There was also a university that was opened on those lines here in India. But I think to some extent there has been in education, there has been a realization and a recognition that introducing children to the outdoors makes a lot of sense. So I would say to Lauren that the way to really do it is to introduce children more and more to nature. It does not always have to be classroom learning. It could be just going on a nature trail or a nature walk. There's a lot of learning that's involved. It's a different form of learning. But there is a lot of learning involved. And when children are introduced to nature at a very early age, what I've seen from my childhood friends, the ones who took to nature at a very early age, they've stuck to it for the rest of their lives. Yeah, so that would be my recommendation to the question that Lauren has asked. I think we have a round for one. Just for closing statements, I'd like to sort of go first. To me, for what I have done in my personal capacity to move towards an ecological civilization, then I'll hand this over to Nitisha, to you, and to Joan. So, and for me, moving in this direction has been, the power of small changes, incremental changes. Yeah, and I'll just give you maybe, 2 or 3 examples. So I'm a daily gardener. I garden on a daily basis. Yeah, it's an indispensable, a part of my routine. And when we go on our travel, my wife is always telling me that, oh, he's worried about his babies that he's left behind in the veranda. So I garden daily. Yeah, and there are other ways and means that I have, embraced nature. So I turned vegetarian like maybe more than 2 decades ago, and for ethical reasons as well as for environmental reasons. But I continued eating fish. And I still do eat fish. Till one of our colleagues asked me to watch this Netflix documentary called Seaspiracy. And when I watched that documentary, I was so shocked and so stunned. So I've given up eating industrial fish as far as possible. So I don't eat John Dory fish. I don't eat Chilean sea bass. Anything that is, farmed. And in fact, the fish that I stick to is just basically, that has been fished by community fishermen. Yeah, so those are some of the changes that that I have tried to make, and buying fair trade products, as far as possible. Yeah, so I'm just going to pass this on to you, Joan and Nitisha, if there's something that you'd like to share about your own personal life, and then we will call it a close.
Well, so I will just add +1 to whatever Shakti
Yes,
said of
yeah,
being
you
a
can add
daily
plus one.
gardener,
Yeah.
vegetarian, everything that is possible to do, living in the city. But I think for me, the core is kindness, and leading from the heart. That's the shift that I have seen in my life when I transition from corporate to whatever I do right now, is to be kind to myself each day, and to lead with compassion. Uh, that's really for me the stepping stone of my own life, and then a stepping stone towards the ecological civilization. Starting from my home, I have to be kind to everybody that I interact with and not practice judgment. And it's everyday work, but I think, if I try to remind myself when I wake up that, I have to be kind to myself and I have to lead from the heart and my intuition, and then allow things to happen. So that's my work, everyday work, which I continue to do and hope to keep doing.
Fantastic. Compassion, empathy, lovely. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Nitisha. Joan, the last word for you.
Wow, how can I follow that? Yeah, I think for me also, this idea of the heart and what we call treasures of the heart, this compassion, love, connection, everything like that is just the key. And also dialogue of a really deep and open kind. And I think that can be really helpful for all of us too, because we're so busy. So even to sort of set up almost like a buddy, it's like, okay, let's check in with each other every month and see how we're doing on deepening something, some aspects. I think that can also be so valuable. Just getting another person's insight on our own little steps and sharing ideas. So that would be my last contribution. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Joan. Thank you both, Joan and Nitisha, as a token of appreciation, for your presence here on Shaktify's webinar. Yeah, we have planted 7 saplings for both of you. Joan, for you, 7 saplings have been planted in the Thar Desert here in India. And Nitisha, for you, 7 saplings have been planted in the state of Telangana here in India. This is through
We need it. We need it
Sankalp
in
Taru
Telangana right
Foundation.
now.
Yeah, all right, through Sankalp Taru Foundation. I realized that you were doing some work in that region. Yeah, so I chose that state for you. And
Amazing.
you will soon receive an email intimation from Sankalp Taru Foundation. Yeah, and you can monitor the growth of your
Can you
babies.
share the information with all of us? It's so interesting because I was reflecting on the fact that I'm never doing enough towards an ecological civilization and thinking I've been wanting to plant more trees for so long, and I haven't been doing it. So thank you, Shakti. You've
Well, thank you,
fulfilled
Joan.
much.
Thank you, Nitisha, and thank you to our audience. Yeah, wishing
Thank
you
you.
a good evening or a good day. Yeah, and look forward to being in touch. Yeah, bye for now. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so